here we are, Spacemap Go. So a little bit of backstory here. So Ger sent me a kit with a 5.1 surround system, a Galaxy 816, an iPad Pro, and a Glen Sound Dante interface a few weeks ago. And I played around, got the hang of how this all works. And I'm going to share that with you. Yeah, I'm not quite the power user yet, but if anybody knows my background, you know that I've been a huge fan of the Q Station products and LCS products over the years. So it was something I was excited to be able to try, and I'm really looking forward to actually getting our industry back on track so I can get out and use this on a show. So this is a little bit of an unboxing type situation where I'm going to take you through the preliminary stages of using the app and using some of the features of the app. And then in the next session, we'll go a little bit deeper and play around with some other things and talk. In the next session, I want to talk about applying it to different types of productions and how you could use it as a tool. And yeah, as Jeff said, Josh is on the call, David also, so that's fantastic. They are Spacemap app experts, so welcome them, and they can jump in anytime. So let's start with some background. As many people know, Spacemap's been a feature of the LCS, the Q Station type products over the years, probably 20 years. And it is an audio spatialization and mixing tool that allows the user to add localization and motion to a sound field. So you have an existing sound system, and you can actually move sound around that system in a much more sophisticated way than a simple panner or even a quad panner or any of those things. You can basically create the instrument, the sound system instrument that you want, and then manipulate it in the way that you want. Highly flexible, scalable, and customizable. And so it had only been available on Q Station up until this latest development. And I guess they were hiding things under the hood in the Galaxies, because now it's available to be able to be run on a Galaxy processor. And it's included for free. If you have a Galaxy processor, you can run it in Spacemap mode and get all the features of these sort of things already existing. You don't have to pay $20,000 or something to unlock the plugin. It's all just there, which is pretty amazing. So what is it and how does it work? So it's essentially a graphic representation. So it starts with a virtual piece of graph paper, which will become your map. To that, you add a graphical representation of your sound system or portions of your sound system, because it could be just part of the sound system that you want to include. It doesn't have to include everything. For example, you may not want to include monitors or some special effects system or something else, or you may want to concentrate the space map on a particular area of the sound system. So it's up to you how you configure the map. But most importantly, what you're creating is a graphical representation of what the sound system looks like in its spatial relationships. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to drop in some loudspeakers. The way the system works is a series of nodes, and each node represents a different element of the map. The sort of primary building blocks is speaker nodes. And so what you see here on the screen is the blue squares are speaker nodes, and they represent the physical output of the Galaxy processor that actually leads to the speaker. So in this case, as I said, I have a little 5.1 type system here. So here's the 5 nodes that you would have in a 5.1 system. And they're, as I say, represented by the blue squares are speaker nodes. But there are other types of nodes in the toolkit to be able to create a map that represents the sound system that you have to deal with. And in some cases, there may be a place that you want to represent on the map where a speaker doesn't exist. And so in order to do that, we use something called a virtual node. And the virtual node is connected to a series of speaker nodes and basically shares a signal with those nodes. The idea being that if you're sitting right on top of the virtual node, then you would have equal power to all of the other speakers that are connected to that virtual node. So yeah, in this case of a 5.1, we don't have a speaker in the middle. but we're going to create a virtual node in the middle. And then you can see there's a line that represents the connection and the referencing to the actual speakers. Oh, I'm not going to be looking at the chat. So if anything comes up chat wise, maybe Jeff here or Peter or somebody can just flag something if there's a question at an appropriate moment.
Absolutely.
Great. There are in some cases where you might need an output that actually is represented in the map, but maybe has a more constant output. So for example, subwoofers. The subwoofers, you wouldn't, unless you had 5 subwoofers with your 5 channels, you wouldn't want the sound of the sub energy to go away when you're moving, to the rear of the room, for example. Although if you did, you could set it up that way. But in this case, what you want is you want to set up something called a derived node. And a derived node, again, much like the virtual node, is affiliated with other nodes. And basically, when sound goes to any of those nodes, it also goes to the derived node. So it's perfect for something like a subwoofer. Might be a fill system as well that really doesn't want to be moving around or having any sort of spatialization. It just wants to be static. And in that case, you could use a derived node. So yeah, you link the derived node to other speaker nodes, and any information that goes to those speaker nodes will also go to the derived node. And as I say, perfect for subwoofers. I mean, if you had a front subwoofer and a rear subwoofer, then you could link just the front 3 speakers with the front sub, and the rear sub with the back 2 speakers. And then you would still get, the spatialization within the low frequencies as well. The building blocks of Spacemap Go are centered around the triangle. And the triangle there's an algorithm that they've been using for years in Spacemap that allows for equal power to be distributed to the 3 points of the triangle from any point that's within the triangle visually, graphically. And so all of the space maps are built around a series of triangles, pyramid power. So what you do is, once you have all your nodes placed, you then establish what's called a triset. And the triset is a triangle where there is a node at each point of the triangle. That way the system can use the algorithm to decide how much signal energy should go to each point of the triangle, to each node in the system. So with my basic 5.1 system I've got here, you can see that it's subdivided into these 5 trisets. And at any point within that triset, the energy is distributed amongst the 3 nodes that makes up the triset. As you get closer to one node, obviously the algorithm would tell the system to send more signal to that particular node, and so on. So basically your space map gets zoned into these triangles known as trisets. So, I mean, essentially, if you built this, this is a 5.1 system that's ready to go. You would graphically move the sound around within the system, and you would have a 5.1 mix environment that you could use to mix, a film in 5.1 or a live sound event in 5.1, anything like that, music. There's one other type of node, though, that the space map includes, and it's, I think, especially in a live setting and a theater setting, is really important, is the silence node. So these red nodes that you see on the outside of the sound field, they represent silence. So what that allows you to do is to create sound that moves beyond the sound system and then starts to fade out. So if you have some motion that moves across the front and then upstage, as it goes further and further upstage, it'll get quieter and quieter and fade out, or same thing behind you. So in this case, we have I have built an area around our 5.1 with a bunch of silence nodes to be able to have sound move out. They don't have to be on the outside. You could have a silence node in the middle. It all depends on what you're trying to achieve. But that's the function of a silence node, is that as you approach that particular node, the signal level is reduced rather than sent to, say, a speaker. So it is a way of, as I say, doing a, if you're having something approaching from the rear, you can have it start in the silence node and then fade into the speaker and then move into the sound field. So hopefully that all makes sense. You can make the space map as simple or as complicated as you need. The 5.1 is a pretty simple space map. This one is pretty cool looking too, and I would love to try it sometime. This is a collinear 7 space map, which allows you to do sort of lateral imaging in a sort of concert setting or in a mixed setting where you have multiple arrays of speakers.
So Peter, one of
Yeah.
the things that's really popular right now that we're seeing in the industry is the 5 frontal systems, or 7. And it's important to note that Spacemap Go can do the exact same thing that all of these companies are charging you a lot of money for. The difference is it's just a galaxy and a free update. You just draw the space map that you need. This is a complex example using virtual nodes of 7 speakers across the stage with 2 subwoofers. But it's very simple to draw this and make it fairly easy. It looks complex, but it's actually very, very straightforward. So
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so this is the other aspect. It's not just about moving helicopters around. It's really about distributing audio to your sound system and creating an immersive and localized type environment, which is really fantastic. So yeah, I mean, this kind of environment is really exciting, and I would love to get into a situation where I can play around with it in this kind of environment. So yeah, that's a very complicated space map. And also you could do a very complicated, more traditional surround type environment too, where you have, you know, at the Avon Theatre at the Stratford Festival, for example, where we have like 22 zones of surrounds that surround the proscenium, or surround the proscenium stage in around the audience. We can do very effective space maps using that kind of thing too, where you're really immersed in the sound. So the last little bit of background that we need to cover before we go and look at the app is how we actually move the sound in Spacemap. And there's essentially 2 ways to do this, 2 predominant ways. There may be more magical ways that I haven't yet discovered, but the 2 prominent ways are in a more static way, where you move the position marker. I have a question mark there because I don't know what the official Meyer terminology is.
I think we're calling it position locator.
Oh, so close.
Yeah, typically in the industry, they're calling it an object. So if you've heard that word, we call it object or position locator.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Position. So I called it position marker, but okay. Position locator. There we go. It was a pretty close guess.
Same.
Yeah, same. So, so in this screen, which you'll see when we look at the app, this kind of a thing, you can see where the position marker is located, and then you can see that it's showing the matrix row, the values that are required in the various outputs in the matrix to achieve this localization. You can see there's, you know, energy in the left and the center and none in the right. There's 0 in the sub because it's a derived node. And then there's some energy, a little bit of energy in the left rear and no energy in the right rear. So it basically, as you move it around, it's calculating. But if you leave that position there, then that matrix stays in the matrix, and any sound you send to that channel or bus will be presented in that picture. So for example, in the collinear 7 that we were talking about, which is also the name of my new band, I'm looking for 6 other people, I guess, to be part of the collinear 7. So there's that. Excuse me, I need a beverage. So in this case, you might not want movement in the collinear 7 type space map. You may just want to be presenting this in a linear localized type situation. And so in this case, you may just be putting the position marker in a particular place, and that's where you're sending the violins, and then a different position where you're sending the brass, you know, and you can continue to mix in that way and move the sections around a large sound system like this. Or you could use it for a stationary sound effect as well. If you're using even the 5.1 system, if you have an effect that wants to happen in a particular location, you can just move the marker there and just be done with it. You don't have to get any fancier than just putting it where you want it, if that makes sense. If you want motion though, then you introduce what are called trajectories. And trajectories are a path that is superimposed on top of the map that you can then put in motion, and you can control the time and all the aspects of this trajectory and how it's influenced or how it influences the space map. But in this case, you create a path that moves around the map, which gives you the the motion and localization effects that you're after. And those are called trajectories.
And one other thing about trajectories can be changed in real time. Spacemap Go is a live mixing tool. It's literally designed to not only do theatrical sound, but music production as well. And one thing that you might want to do is change the trajectory that a sound is on in real time. And so with the iPad, and we'll show this in a bit, I'm sure, you can build a trajectory and then change it to a completely different trajectory, so your sound can zigzag across the room and then move up and down however you want. So it's a fun little feature that we've added.
Yeah, fantastic. Yes. So very powerful and ready to go in your Galaxy processor right now. Talk a little bit about the I/O side. So the Spacemap matrix is built up to 32 input. I'm calling them buses because I think that there's a if they call them channels inside the box, but when we think of channels in a console and you think you might have I don't know, 8 violins and 8 violin mics on 8 channels, then your channel count gets up pretty high. But if you think of those as the violin section and then put them into a channel of the Spacemap, then it's because you're going to image them all in the same location. Then I think of it more of a buses. May also be a holdover from my Q Station and sort of LCS days, but there you go.
Yeah, that's a really important thing with object-based mixing. You never people are finding that they don't ever want to have like all 20 microphones of their drum kit in separate channels. We let the console handle that. So the console mixes things down and still does what it's good at, except it spits out maybe a stereo or mono bus for an instrument or set group of instruments. And then Spacemap is handling the movement. So the relationship between console and immersive processor is the console still doing all of the things like effects, EQ, mixing, but the pan pot from your console is now in the Galaxy or on your iPad and can do so much more than just a left-right panning mix. And we'll talk about that later, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why I think of them more as buses, because in a lot of cases, they're going to be subgroups of different sort of like instruments or whatever. So the matrix is made up of 32 input, as I say, buses, and that can be a combination of physical I/O, analog or AES, or it could be AVB inputs. So even with a single 816 like I have here, I have 8 physical inputs and 24 AVB potential. I don't have anything plugged into the AVB right now, but that would give me 32 inputs to the Spacemap matrix. You can also cascade it across multiple units, though, if you need to derive. I think I might say something about this. Yeah. If you want more physical inputs, then you could cascade multiple Galaxy units. So for example, with 4 units, each with their 8 local IO, you can get up to 32 inputs into your Spacemap. So that's on the input side. On the output side, it starts to get kind of crazy because each processor has its own processing power. Josh was telling me yesterday that you can get up to 256 outputs, possibly more, which is kind of crazy to think of that many outputs.
Yeah,
all
I have a
cascaded.
photo for that. If you want me to share that real quick, we can show.
Sure.
Here's what, if you want to stop the share and then I'll share. Okay, here we go. And just so, there we go. So that is a total of 16 galaxies. Once you have more than one galaxy, you need a Milan or Avenue certified AVB switch. There's a whole bunch of options out there now. And so we've tested up to 16 galaxies. So we can have up to 32 by 256 output system. That's the equivalent of a DCM4 Dimitri system worth of outputs. And we think it actually can do more than 16 galaxies. So we don't really have a set limit of outputs. We just have a limit on objects or inputs, which is 32. One more thing, just talking about 32 inputs, because they're objects, this is what that would look like. Here is 32 inputs on a single panner. All of these other companies give you one panner. And it's one panner to rule them all, and it looks something like this. We can do that with the overview window, But what we also do is allow you to have 32 individual channels across your system, so you can control each object independently. This is really useful, especially when you have 32, when you have a lot of objects, because it's really hard when you go back, when you think about this, like which channel is guitar 1? I don't know. Some of these other immersive processors have a 96 objects available, and good luck trying to find your mix, you know, when you're doing this live or trying in a production environment where you need to create an immersive mix very fast. So we've laid out the GUI to make it as simple as possible. And then one last thing, and I know you'll get into this, Peter, is you can have a completely different space map on each channel. And so when you think about what a space map is just a custom panner that you draw. If you have a lot of loudspeakers, you can draw a panner that moves the sound around all the loudspeakers, or you can draw a panner or a space map that just moves it across the front, depending on how you want to do it. And I have tons of examples of different things you can do with space map that we might not get into, but
yeah,
all
that
right,
might
back
be
to
good
you,
for the follow-up session.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I was going to say that the aspect of being able to, I gotta get my screen sharing going again.
Oh, I messed you up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you messed me up, but that's okay. Window management, that's what it's all about. There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Very good. So yeah, that starts to blow your mind when you start thinking about that each one of these input buses, or channels as they call them, you know, could be a different space map. And in fact, we'll see in the next session how they can even be a combination of space maps all on a single channel, but we'll save that for another time. Another story on the riverbank. Hammy Hamster, for those of you who remember Hammy Hamster. So yeah, basically that's the crazy side of the output is how many outputs you can actually be having working in the system all at once. And then the last thing about it too is that you also get access to all of the functions that are still in the Galaxy. So all the EQ, the all pass filters, U-shaping, delay, the delay matrix. You still have access to that, just not from the Spacemap Go app. You still use Compass for that, but it's all still there. So and it all works in tandem. So yeah, super powerful on that front. Okay, it's starting to sound too much like a sales pitch, and I'm a sound designer, not a salesperson. So unless I'm going to get a commission, if I start getting commission, then maybe we can. But let's open up and look at the app. So I'm going to share the screen, and
yeah. So as Peter was saying and get started, the Galaxy is still your loudspeaker processor, and it's just a Galaxy. It's got 16 outputs. So those outputs, you can have a Galaxy at your front of house console and not have any loudspeakers or whatsoever, and use the Galaxy like an inline panner if you wanted to, but it'll still tune your PA. And so it's just a free update if you have a Galaxy. So your immersive processor is now not only you're not only doing loudspeaker optimization, you're now doing immersive audio with a free update, which is a crazy good value add.
I'd say. Who says there's no such thing as a free lunch? Right. So let's look at the app. So when you boot up the app, I believe it's been a while now since I did, but I believe there is a little wizard that lets you help. But if there isn't, you can manually configure your setup. And to do that, you go to the settings tab down here on the bottom right. We'll do a quick little tour of this. You know, for those of you who remember the setup or the system status window from QStation, this is essentially the equivalent of that. It's telling me that I'm connected to an 816, and you know, here's the various things about the processing usage, and temperature is okay, and all your okay twirlies that you would get from the QStation stuff. But the first thing that you would want to do is configure things, your inputs and outputs. So you can go to the input, you can select whether you want AES or analog. You can choose whether they're AVB or they're local IO. You would set all these things up to match your system, however you want it. And yeah, you just pop those settings down. On the output side, you can name your outputs. And again, if you were using more than one 816, you'd be able to name them all differently and access them all through this this world. External device configuration. This is where you get into IP addresses and stuff, but also how you access OSC, and probably a bunch of other great features that we'll look at the next time, or maybe at the end of this if we have time. Josh may show us some other cool stuff. And then some system configuration aspects of getting, of looking at AVB, and whether you want to load a project from the Galaxy on restart or have it just boot with nothing. And again, fans of QStation will realize the value of the log, so you can access the log and see if there's any weirdness going on within your system. There's some app settings that like display and some of those things. We won't get into that in the interest of time, but those are how you configure the way your app works. Yeah, I mean, it's all super straightforward. The one thing I'll say about this is that, again, as a diehard QStation user, I fully recognize that over the years, there were challenges with people who didn't want to get, like, the thing is I loved about it, or do love about it still with Dimitri systems, is how you can get under the hood and you can control any aspect of it. And to me, that's exciting and fantastic. But to a lot of people, that's daunting and a little bit intimidating. And so, over the years of using QStation, many times I had conversations with Richard Bugg or people at the Meyer headquarters there about whether there was a way to have sort of, the pro level and like a beginner level, and maybe the console, a Q console, could boot up into sort of a basic template to take the sort of intimidation away. And I think that you guys have done a great job with the iPad app of actually taking that away from Spacemap and not having to worry about control points and sub queues and all of that stuff, and just being able to quickly get something happening. So yeah, anyway, so we'll get into this. So when you look at the mix window, everything's accessed from these 5 tabs across the bottom. When you look at the mix window, you see access to your 8 channels at a time here, and you can page across the up to 32 channels across the top and see a big overview, which would show them sort of all at one time imposed. But we'll just look at these first few channels. The first thing that is super handy is there's a button here that lets you link. So if in this case I've got them linked, you could have them not linked, which means channel 1 and 2 are completely independent. But if it is a stereo program material you have coming in, then you can link them. And now I don't have to enter the data in both channels. It'll whatever I do on channel 1 will be reflected on channel 2 as well. There's also, there's a weird glare on my screen here. There's also a mute and a solo, which I'm sure everybody knows what mutes and solos do. And then to start accessing and getting something happening, you can hit select Spacemap. It opens up this window. You say add a Spacemap, and then it gives you a bunch of templates. And this is where I think a lot of users who might have been intimidated before will be satisfied, because you have this access to all of these different templates of what you can, of how you can lay this out. So for example, I have a 5.1 system, so I can just select 5.1 and I can say done. And now 5.1 is loaded into my channel 1 and channel 2. And if I get some content going, oh, I think I have to actually, once I grab the position, it should come to life. Yeah. This is on a mono microphone. This is going to be less than impressive as far as I need a binaural head or something like that. But now you can see this position marker. When I grab and move it around, I'm getting the sound happening. And if we go and we look at the channel view, you can see the matrix at the top, and I can grab, you can see as I move around the space map, the values within the matrix window are all changing.
Yep, and we also have a white halo, and that white halo expands and contracts, representing how much matrix level is in each node or speaker.
Oh yeah, cool. So as I get closer to a node, you can see that the node kind of gets a little glow, saying that it's sort of the primary contributor. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that gives you a really good visual way, even if you're programming offline, but like let's say you're on your laptop on a plane, you could still visually place your objects and sounds looking at how big the halos are. So it'll give you a rough way to mix in before you get on site.
Right on. And then of course, each channel has an overall volume level control as well, which you can automate. All right, so that's you know, a stationary type situation, how you can load a space map. Any questions about any of this so far? No? Cool. And then as we were saying before, but we'll prove it, you can go here and you can have a different space map loaded somewhere in, and if, in this case, I didn't link those channels, but I can hit select additional channels, and I could load this space map now into 3 through 6. And when I say done, you can see now that's in a different space map.
Peter, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
If you were defining a left and right system first as your first 2 objects, and then your next 2 objects were others, you know, let's say mono inputs that were different effects that you might use, how would you assign, for example, the left channel to just the left node and only the left node and nowhere else? I have this exact system set up just like you. I have a 5.1 system. One of my challenges is I can't get the locator directly on the left node so that the left speaker or the left channel is dedicated to the left speaker array.
Yeah. So when you go into the channel mode here, you can now where is it?
There's a couple ways to do it actually. So the first way is to go to settings and then go to Spacemap control. So if you want to go do that real quick, Peter, go to settings, and all the way down on the left is Spacemap control. And then you have something called snap to nodes. And so this will snap directly to each node. It's not good for when sounds need to move around, but it's good if you want to play something in only one speaker. And then the other thing, a way to do it is on your, like, let's say you have a left and right from your console and you never want it to change. Right. Just unassign a space map and just tap in on the matrix, the level that you want for that channel.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to show is even with the matrix loaded, you can go up and edit these nodes. If you
That's
look.
the same with the derived node as well, right? You can set the level from all the channels going to the derived node, for example, subwoofers.
Yeah, absolutely. You can just control how much level sends from the nodes to the sub. So yeah, then the next thing you do, Peter, is just unassign that space map.
Yeah.
That was not obvious to me, and I just couldn't get it directly out
Yeah.
of the one channel.
Yeah. So to lose a space map, you just go back into the, as if you're assigning it, and you hit the X and it goes away.
And the other thing you can do, which is really neat, go to settings. Let's say you always want that left and right to be there no matter what, and you never want to touch it. Go to locking control. And then you can lock channels and assign what channels you want to lock out so that when you touch the iPad, you can't manipulate those 2 channels.
Right. So,
and that's on a client basis. So every iPad that you had would need to be adjusted. So. But anyway, that's a hot tip.
Yep. And there's also, if you have nothing assigned to the no space map assigned, you get this input matrix value. So from there you can edit them as well.
Thanks a lot. I was struggling with that. It's not obvious, so yeah.
But it's not obvious, but there's 4 different ways to do it. So that's good. I love software where there's lots of different ways to do things.
Peter, we do have another quick question, if you don't mind. Is there a way to set a stereo pair to mirror their trajectories? Yeah,
so there's this cool, the way things are set up. Let me reload the space map here. And we haven't gotten to trajectories yet, but if we put in a trajectory, so I'll show you, this is how you say choose trajectories. And in this case, we're going to, let's put in empath, because I'm an empath. And the channels are linked. So in fact, the space maps are linked as well. and if I get this space map running, you can see they're linked, so they're following exactly. But if I go up and change the link and I actually change it to be mirror X, now they're going opposite to each other. Or I think this is what the question is, right? Mirror Y, now they're kind of going, so it's about which axis they're mirroring on.
Yeah, and in object-based mixing, this then becomes the question is, what is a stereo channel anymore? You can maintain the stereo panning that you've built. Let's say you build a stereo object in headphones and you have your width. Now you can maintain that panning by linking those two channels, but then you can decide how they want to link in the room using this linking feature.
Yeah, because if you look here now, you could have material on the left that's kind of decorrelated from the material on the right, and now they're kind of chasing each other around the room, depending on what it is that you're doing. So you can do all kinds of amazing things with the way these things are mirrored. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's great. And I do have another one quickly for you.
Great. I love questions.
This is a bit more of a theoretical thing, but and it's a good question. What is the practical application of something like this for a smaller mid-sized venue? I can appreciate the power of it when it can add to your toolbox, but can it be utilized realistically without losing time? Is it easy enough for casual techs to use, that kind of thing?
I think so. I think that it all depends on what else you're trying to do. I mean, Josh, maybe you want to speak to this, but it's a tool in the toolkit. And, I would say even in working with QStation, it's not like every cue was done with a space map, but there are certain elements where you really wanted it and it would really add things to the production.
I totally, it's a scalable, flexible tool. So if you have 2 speakers, you can still use this and do panning. If you have 4 speakers on sticks and you're just doing a one-off, you could simply get up and running very quickly. If you have a whole entire system with a balcony, under balcony, you can still use this and maintain the panning relationship. The speed at which it's used compared to everyone else is the fastest. I feel strong enough in saying that. And you can program and mix this as fast as possible. In fact, the guys from Figure 53 said that we make it super easy to program for QLab, and our integration into third-party third-party controllers is the fastest. So I hand iPads out to people that have never touched this, and within 3 minutes, they're mixing immersively. Recently, we did an event with Pooch, Ken Pooch Van Druten, and Pooch, we did an experiment. I gave Pooch 30 minutes of training, and then 3 weeks later, he arrived at a venue, and in an hour, we had a huge immersive mix of a Pink Floyd track that was amazing. So he got up and running very, very quickly. And it's designed for speed, but also flexibility. So it's totally, totally usable. And the cool part about it is you could scale back down to stereo very quickly by just swapping your space maps on your channels.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say is that, I think people get caught up with the motion, and the motion is really cool. Obviously, it does all kinds of great things. But, I remember Jim Neal, as a designer who worked at Stratford a lot, one of the things that he used to do on some shows is that he would do all his cues using Spacemap. And so he would save everything as a space map trajectory. So he had a map that really worked. And, you could actually sit here with the iPad and find the location of wherever it is that you want that sound to come from. And as Josh said, it could be just the stereo image, or it could be an LCR type situation on your stage. If you build a map that's reflective of your stage, of your particular situation, then you can quickly grab a location, build a cue, grab a location, build a cue. And so I do think that it actually could work very quickly, even in a small theater with limited time.
Absolutely. And with silent nodes, for example, you can control the level and the pan with one object.
Yeah.
So you can actually mix visually your whole entire system.
Yeah.
It's very, very fast. And then setting snapshots is great. Typically when I have to do a mix for a demo, I can get most of my demo content pre-mixed in about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And have something that would feel comfortable giving someone to play with. So
yeah. So, I mean, you could spend the bulk of your queuing time on sort of these static things, but then when you suddenly need to have the ubiquitous helicopter fly around the room, then, you can take the extra time that it might take to really finesse that. But in my experience, the thing in QStation was always getting a good map. If you had a map that really worked with the room and your system, as far as the level between and the relationships between everything, then everything would go very quickly, because at that point, you're just dialing things in and moving things around, capturing the location, and then moving on from there. So yeah, thanks for the questions though. That's awesome. I love questions. It means people are thinking and stuff, and stops me from just talking on the script. Yeah, good.
It's probably more for Josh, but and this might be something of what we talked about the other day, but is there a chance of a desktop app coming, or is it planned to stay on the iPad?
Well, Spacemap Go can run currently on some desktops. If you have a brand new M1 Mac or you're running Big Sur, the application can run directly on your computer, your desktop. The other thing to note is this runs on any flavor of iPad that can run iOS 14 or above. So this will even run on your iPad mini, and it can run on multiple iPads. You could build a mixer of iPads if you wanted to. One with an overview screen, one with a couple channels, one with the mixed view. So it's a really cheap immersive console when you think about it. Yeah, so that's there. And then we also, we could talk about this later. We do have a plugin coming out that will be for consoles and DAW plugins.
Cool. I think based on the time we've got, we might table that for part 2 if you're available, Josh, and we can look at that as a plugin. Yeah, Sean, you had your hand up too.
I see a really strong application. We have a lot of smaller theaters out here in Western Canada, little left, center, right systems, and most of them seem to have stereo consoles. And I see a real application for those guys having the ability to mix true left, center, right, but just by adding the iPad to their system, and they could still use their stereo console and group outputs could create all these objects. I think
for sure.
It's really strong application for smaller places where they're not truly left, center, right.
Well, and in addition, they get the power and processing of a Galaxy, right? Like that's the thing, is this isn't what it only does. This is what it does, like its day job is the system processing, but then it also has this other thing that you can use for sure. So I did it quickly, but we'll go over it again. You can see at the bottom of each channel here, it says choose trajectory. So in this window, you can go through and decide to choose whatever trajectory you want. As I said, you can select additional channels and in they go. And then when you're running it now, you've got this crazy spiral sound happening. So it's just that easy to get up and running. To capture information now, we'll move on to the set list. So the mix snapshot is a snapshot that covers the overall matrix, the overall system and the matrix. So it's kind of like a setup queue. Then when you want to address additional individual channels, you want something only to happen on channel 1 and 2, for example, then you use these channel snapshots that you can see in this other window here. So I've already created my mix snapshot is called test 1. And inside test 1, there are a series of channel snapshots. So they're smaller, sort of scoped out as far as channels go. And you can see the first one says channels 1 to 4. The next one's channel 1 and 2. And you can see they address the different channels. You can rearrange these if you want. You can drag them up and down. And you can update them. You can play them directly from. I hit it and then away we go. And you can see it recalled the trajectory and the space map that I was working in, because if you remember, we'd cleared the space maps from that first 2 channels. So now it's basically fading out and restoring the space map to a point where it's stopped. And you can see nothing's affected on 3 and 4 are still doing that crazy spiral. so within the set list, you can control each one of these snapshots, channel snapshots. And you'll also notice that if you pop open the ... you'll see external recall ID 1001. So that's the OSC message that's required in order to recall that sub queue. Or I'm stuck in queue station. I called it a sub queue. It's not a sub queue. It's a channel snapshot. But if I open up my my QLab, which you can't see, but if I do, then I'm going to run a message, and you can see that fade up and start just ran, and I'm doing this over OSC. And you can recall a variety of things.
Yeah, and we purposely designed the OSC library to be as human readable as possible. So it's not like you're having to make, put some weird syntax in for your OSC commands. To recall a mix snapshot, it's /recall/mix and then that external ID number. Yeah. Same thing for channel, /recall/channel and then that number.
Yeah, and there's actually a really great document on interfacing it with QLab for OSC, which I could, if anybody's interested, you can get it online, or I could paste into the chat if you're interested. So yeah, so this is how things are organized, and they're saved within a project, and it's saved in. You can save it when you save it. It prompts you to whether you want to save it to the Galaxy or to the iPad or to both. So you could store it just on the iPad and have it available in that form, or why not send it to both? What else can I tell you about the set list tab?
You can export the set list tab as well. So if you pre-build everything, the thing that is important is what's called the default mix snapshot. So the one thing to note about Spacemap Go compared to a normal mode Galaxy is where you save everything is now within Spacemap Go. So if I reboot my Galaxy in normal mode, Galaxy mode, it would just reboot to the way it always was. Whereas with Spacemap Go, it works very similar to how Dimitri has worked in the past, to where it has to recall a queue in order to set everything up. So in this case, you would update your user mix defaults, and that would handle only the things that are Spacemap Go. And then if you are tuning your sound system or need to do delay changes or EQ changes while you're live in a show, that gets stored as what's called a system snapshot. And that can be found on the top left corner. You'll see a button that says system snapshots. So if I change a delay time or I mute some outputs on my Galaxies, this takes a picture of all of the Galaxies on the network and all of the compass settings. So it's just important to note when your Galaxy's in Spacemap mode, saving and capturing things all happens within the Spacemap Go app. You still use Compass to adjust things as far as tuning, but everything gets saved via the iPad. And it's all saving onto the Galaxy. It's not like it's saving on the iPad.
Absolutely. So we don't have that much time left. I'm going to quickly show you how you can create your own space maps and your own trajectories. So in here, you can use one of the templates to get you going quickly. But if you want to create your own, then you go into this blank canvas, a blank graph paper, as it will, and you can see we've got the option to add, and there's little icons on the top left here as to which type of speaker node, if you remember talking about it before. So if we want to add some speaker nodes in here, we can go here, left, center, right, and then then I'm gonna, I think, do I have to do the, no, I'm gonna, I'm just going to do this. It'll give me, it's just the sub is out of order here. So 4, and then there we go. And then I'm going to go here and I'm going to select the sub and delete it because the sub is a derived node. So there's my 5 speaker nodes. I want a virtual node. So I'm going to add one of those in the middle. And then I must have double clutched there. And then you see this button that says link speaker. So I'm going to tell it that I want it to link to all of these speakers. And then I'm going to say, yes, that's good. Exit the selection. And then I want my subwoofer. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to add add the subwoofer up there, you'll see that it says out 7 because I did it out of order. So I'm going to go here and select it. And then I'm going to, where is it?
Hit the dot, dot, dot.
Dot. Thank you. In this case, I can change the output that it's assigned to. I can go back and make it 4. And that's super awesome. And then remember, everything's based around trisets. So I can go up here. This is the icon is for the trisets. So here I can actually manually punch in my trisets, or I can say, you know, you're super smart. Why don't you auto build them? And I choose which I want included in the trisets. And there it goes. It's figured out that it wants to be those trisets. Oh, I forgot to link my subwoofer. So the subwoofer, you choose what speakers you want it to be derived from. That's all super perfect. And then now if I want a bunch of silence nodes, I didn't, and we can go add. And I think if I do this now, I think I need to actually do a derive node down here.
A virtual node?
Or a virtual node, thank you.
Yeah, you don't have to, but you can.
I think the trisets will play nicer if I.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the panning level will still be the same, but it's just how pretty your triangles look.
Exactly.
If you're OCD, then you know you can do a long press on all of your nodes, and you can actually set the canvas up to snap to create super simple, you know, to make sure everything looks right. But yeah, you can do that, and then you can then again auto build your trisets one more time, and it'll do everything for you. And if you want to use
now,
yeah.
So now it's filled in those silence nodes, and so yeah, pretty quickly I have a 5.1 with a whole silent surround, and I can now name it.
How difficult is it to move objects once you've put them in originally? Is it an easy drag and drop?
Nodes?
Yes.
No, yeah, you just simply do a long press and you can drag it and then deselect it. So yeah, Peter, if you want to just, oh yeah, you can save it to your iPad.
Save it to the iPad. But also it's just saved. So yeah, done. And then, oh, I wanted to go down. So now it appears in the library. And if I wanted to go up, and as Josh said, if I didn't like that my node is here, if I do long press, I can now move it around. I can be really OCD with all of this stuff and go and get out my ruler and measure it. But yeah, there's a space map that's done really quickly. And the same thing with trajectories. If I want to create my own trajectory, I go and say a new trajectory. And if I want to, so you basically, you start at the recording, and as soon as you touch the iPad, it'll start going. Something like that.
Yeah, you can tap or you can drag your finger across. So,
right. And now presumably I can go through and change any individual point if I'm unhappy with that.
Yeah.
But get happening quickly. We go up here and we go.
You can also swipe left to delete points. It's just like Tinder. You just swipe left to delete. The other thing that's really cool about trajectories is you can now adjust the duration. So let's say you have a sound that needs to be a 1 minute movement. You can type in seconds, 60 seconds, and now it'll auto adjust the length of that trajectory to be 60 seconds.
Oh, cool.
And do the math for you. The other thing you can do with trajectories is swap what's called the wait time and the transition time. So if you need a sound that bounces around the room and then smoothly pans, you can do that very simply with the trajectory.
So so now I've got my trajectory. It exists. I can go and load it into a channel if I want. And I'll load my space map. which was oh yeah, 5.1 on silence. And once you're in this channel mode, you can now look at the trajectory on top of the space map, and you can start to play with things like, oh, it's pretty good, but you know, maybe it's too fat. So I can now change this. And
if you press play, I like to do this while pressing play so I can hear the sound. And in real time, the audio is moving according to the trajectory. And yeah, the other way to do this is push the trajectory button on the left side. And now you can use since it's on the iPad, you can pinch and drag and rotate with your fingers.
Oh, cool.
And in real time.
Yeah, I can hear it. If
Yeah.
I make it too big, it's all now out in silence.
Yep.
Once you get this going, do you need to have the iPad there to keep it running, or will it just keep going in the background?
If it's programmed with OSC, and QLab can run it, I like to have an iPad just to make sure that things are firing, and you know. But theoretically, you don't need one. I would recommend.
So if I took this away right now, it would just keep doing this, you know, repeatedly until it got another cue called.
Yep, exactly.
There's a tap delay feature in the latest software. Where's that?
So swipe left on the rate section of the trajectory details.
Yeah.
So this is great because this allows you to tap in a BPM, but also you can put one in.
Thank you.
And then if you swipe to the left again, you can change the direction of the trajectory. So if you, I'm sorry, swipe right. You can change the directory, and there, yeah. So you can have the trajectory move around either way, and it scales. So regardless of if you, in real time right now, if you pinch that trajectory, it'll still be in 165 BPM, right. Regardless of how big or small it is. And then we also have beats per trajectory. So if you have a quarter beat at 165 BPM, it's going to do 4
so you
quarters.
Can get the motion to line up with the, yeah, very cool. And there was something else I was going to say about that. Oh, and just the last thing, you can see here's this thing, repetitions infinite. Maybe you only want it to go 4 times, then you can have it set up so it just runs 4 times and then stops, or 1 time if it's a one-off, if you only need the helicopter to fly in once. So yeah, we basically hit all the sort of beginner get started type things. We didn't look that carefully at actually building a sequence or anything, but we'll leave that for the second one. But this hopefully whets the appetite to come back to it in a few weeks and see what else it can do, and see how it might be applied to a theater show, an attraction, a theme park type thing, a concert. Those are the kind of things that I want to look at, how we might configure it.